This is a guava tree. It is, in my opinion, probably one of the most productive fruit trees by weight and by volume you can grow. Whether that is in an urban food forest, urban homestead, normal homestead, doesn't matter where you want to grow it, this tree is going to give you a lot of food. Per fruit, it also packs more vitamin C than oranges, so you're also getting a health benefit on top of the abundance of food it's going to give you. You can use this fruit in so many different ways, from eating them fresh, which I absolutely love, making jams, preserving them, and then of course they are delicious in baked goods, desserts, anything that requires fruity sweetness to add to the flavors you are trying to get. What I want to do is talk you through how this tree grows and then explain to you how guava trees set fruit, and then using that knowledge we can then prune correctly the correct time of the year so that we can maximize the amount of fruit that this tree gives us year in and year out. All that coming next. Before we get into the pruning of guava trees, let's have a talk about how guava trees actually grow. There are a few things that they prefer, but generally they are not fussy at all, super easy trees to grow. In terms of soil, what they like is free draining. So if you have a heavy, moist, wet clay soil, you're probably going to struggle a bit. I have sandy soil here where I am in Cape Town in South Africa, so for me it's not a problem at all. Make sure it's free draining, but besides that, not much to it. And to follow on from that, if we look at the pH, once again, they are not picky. I'm growing my guava tree in my blueberry bed, and if you grow blueberries, you know they are acid-loving plants. This is a very, very acidic bed. You'll see now in the pictures that these blueberries are absolutely thriving. The guava tree is also absolutely thriving, providing huge fruits and lots of them. So very acid soil, it's thriving perfectly fine. I've seen them growing in almost bare sand, very alkaline, also thriving. So when it comes to pH, nothing to worry about there. When you look at sun, full sun. They are a tropical plant, so if you're in a desert region or in South Africa, if you're further up north where it does tend to get really hot and dry, then you do want to try and give it a little bit of shade during the harsh midday sun. But other than that, give them sun, they absolutely love it. Then a very important thing to remember about guava trees. Because they are tropical, they are frost tender. Meaning, if you have frost, you need to make sure that they have protection during the winter. Depending on the level of cold and freezing that you get, you might need to grow them in pots and then move them around. They grow perfectly fine in pots, so nothing to worry about there. But if you have random frosts that come on throughout the winter, make sure you get a frost sleeve blanket to wrap your tree in. Otherwise, you do run the risk of possibly losing your tree during the winter months. And then very importantly, and pretty much the point of this video, is how they grow in terms of their growth. Now, guavas set fruit on this year or new growth. That gives us a lot of flexibility when it comes to pruning and shaping our tree. So what we can do is we can now, knowing that, prune very heavily to give us the shape that we want and the height. So this tree behind me, as an example, I'm in an urban environment. I don't want a massive guava tree that I need to get on a ladder to harvest. And because they set their fruits on new growth, all that growth is going to be on the top and around the edges. So the more compact and lower my canopy, the easier I'm going to be able to harvest my fruit. That being said, it doesn't mean you need to compromise on the quantity of fruit that you can get. If you have one branch shooting out and it just keeps going, you'll keep getting guavas as it grows from the single stem. But if you take that single stem and you cut it to two, suddenly you have two branches. Both of those are going to be able to bear fruit. The next season you cut those two, and then you're going to get two there and two there, and suddenly you have 4 fruit bearing branches. And now you start seeing the idea of clever pruning. You can bring the canopy in, make it dense, but structure it really well to maximize the fruit you're going to get on a relatively small tree, rather than if you're on a big lot just letting your guava go. At the same time, guava trees can handle heavy pruning. You can take off, if you really wanted to, you could cut it right down to the base and it'll shoot 1 to 2 meters of growth in 1 year. They do grow pretty rapidly once they're established, so don't be afraid to prune your guava tree hard. It's going to give you new growth, and from that new growth, you're going to get lots and lots of yummy, yummy guavas. So before we get into the actual cutting and pruning of this guava tree, I just quickly want to talk about the timing of your guava tree pruning. This is very important because you want to prune to maximize the new growth and make sure that the new growth is able to set fruit. So in the southern hemisphere, what we're looking at is about mid-October. Northern hemisphere, end March, early April. Most importantly, you want to allow 2 to 3 weeks of growth after you've harvested your last fruit. I harvested my last fruit 3 weeks ago, and what that has allowed is it's allowed the tree to swell up the buds enough to actually push out a little bit of growth. And what that allows is for us to decide where we want to cut, where there's already growth, rather than cutting and hoping. Here as an example, I can see that there are 2 buds roughly in line with where I want it. I can cut it there, and those 2 are already growing, which means they're just going to explode. So you can prune it as soon as you've taken the last one, nothing wrong. Personally, I just like to wait 2 to 3 weeks after harvesting that last fruit so that the tree can make the transition from energy into fruit to energy into growth. Then you make the cut and your tree just explodes. We are now up close and personal, and if you look here, you can see what I was meaning by that little bit of growth that comes out if you allow those 2 to 3 weeks. What you want to do with pruning is you want to allow 4 to 6 leaf nodes before you make your prune. So if we count here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 going into the 5th one. So all I want to do there, make the cut, and then if I show you, turn it a bit, this one is going to grow out here, that one is going to grow out there. There is a 3rd one over here which I will leave to see what it does. If there are any interferences here, I'll just take one of them off. I don't like growing 3 in a cluster. It makes a knuckle and just generally doesn't work well with sap flow. So count 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes minimum up to 6. Make the cut, and there's a whole bunch of excitement because the baboons have just arrived. That is a problem where I live, and chasing them away from fruit like this is an ongoing battle. But I had this tree full of fruit and they've been in the garden a few times and they've actually stayed away from it, which is good. Okay, so now we've done that one. If we look at this one over here, we're going to do the same thing. We've got 1 leaf node, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to stick with minimum because I want to keep the tree as short as possible. And you can see there, we already have 2 pieces of growth that's already coming out. So this tree can grow much quicker, knowing where its endpoint is. All the energy can go into pushing those 2 out. So now you can see I've already taken off this much growth, more coming here, and I'm literally just going to do the same tree round. Bring the top down, bring the sides in, let the new growth just expand out, and then harvest bountiful numbers of guavas in a couple of months' time. I'm standing in front of the pruned guava tree now, and you can see it's much lower in terms of canopy height, and the branches have been pruned to structurally accommodate a lot more growth as well as significantly more guavas. This tree is going to now push out a lot of new growth, and from that new growth is going to come the next flush of guavas. With fruit set comes fruit thinning. So I am going to see you again when I come back to this tree in a couple of months' time to thin out the fruit, to make sure that we are not overburdening this tree with energy it needs to put into fruit that it cannot simply ripen. So we'll come back, I'll show you how to thin these to maximize the actual harvestable guavas. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video and now have the understanding of how guavas grow and what you can do to prune your guavas to maximize their future potential and harvests. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you found value in this video and think there are other people that might enjoy it, please share it out. And if you got any questions about anything that I've said or shown you, please drop me a comment. I'll definitely get back to you. Until next time, happy pruning.